You're listening to The Field Report. Unexpectedly, my friend and I were talking. We are talking about what happened. Really changed my whole viewpoint about what happened in the decision to go into Syria. I was reluctant to say this, but I really didn't know what to expect. But after hearing some really valid resources or information regarding the attack that happened in Syria, our president made the right decision. I did not know what I know now, and I know that our president is trying to do the right thing. So I just wanted to offer an answer for a lot of the things that are happening. I think we do jump the gun. Yeah, we do. I don't think you can make a decision like that easily. So I know a lot of people, when you read these reports, it does take you off guard knowing that the media hasn't been exactly on the side of Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. But I wanted to just leave it at that because I think there are a lot of people were taken back by that whole story that occurred last night. So it makes a lot more sense in the reality to look back that sometimes we just do jump the gun, but it doesn't come with a little skepticism, being as we've lived through a lot of things. And that's why I'm going to go into this other report about military soldiers and stories that you don't hear about. One of the things I think is an incredible injustice is especially somebody that served with real high honor. Not many people have ever stepped in the shoes of a Navy SEAL who's served their country, has 3 Purple Hearts, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars included. You really don't know what it's like until you are in the presence of somebody with those kind of medals. Those medals really don't tell the story, though. The story I'm telling you, though, matters a lot to me because I'm very tight with my friend. We shared a lot of ups and downs the last 3 or 4 years. And one of the things that I learned about the life of a Navy SEAL is it's not the story that a lot of people want to hear, though. See, with all the privileges and pageantry, also understand these guys have also watched some of their guys die in their arms. That's a story that's really hard to tell, but I had the privilege to be able to share the story, and I went through a lot to get permission to tell the story. So your whole life changes when you're connected in a way that you're normally not connected. I served as a reservist, and I got injured real early into my Army career. I really didn't even have the ability to finish out my military service. So I didn't receive any of the extra benefits that came with being in the military. I was paralyzed. So experiencing paralysis is only part of the story. It's all the trouble I went through in civilian life. Outside of the military, most people don't understand what kind of training you come away with. It changes you, yes. Does it have to scar you for life? No. But there are civilians that simply take that for granted, and I'm sorry that they do that. That's why it took a lot to convince my friends to tell the story, because the average civilian does not understand the sacrifices that are being made in behalf of our flag and our country. So, it's really hard to hear the side of the story, but I want to tell you there's an upside and a downside always to each story. So I'm taking the time to tell you the story that I know veteran military journalists that would never want to tell this side of the story because there comes a lot of grief and pain. And the only way we can let off some steam is laugh it off at some things. Like the idea that somebody would call somebody that served after different operations crazy. You have no idea what crazy is till you look the eyes of the enemy. And that's a part of the story I want to tell you guys. Again, it takes a lot of convincing to tell you what kind of enemy is on the other side. Some of you might look at your enemies and might say, oh, they really don't mean what they say. But when you dig a little deeper and you realize the heart of a human being, there's a dark side of people. And no, some of them live in other countries. So when they say that immigrants have rights, they're certainly not thinking about that when they have held your men and your troops and your squad hostage. So I laugh off at these people who call us crazy. You haven't seen crazy till you're held hostage and you're barely, there's so many bludgeon marks on your body. You can't even stand, you can't sit, you can't walk, you can't talk. And if it hadn't been for the few heroes that came in to rescue these guys, at least a couple of them are still surviving. So I got off the phone with my friend only to hear that a family member of mine called him crazy. And I think when I look at a girl or a guy who never wore a uniform, you have no idea the insult, how insulting it is to be corrected by somebody that's never stepped in the shoes of a soldier. So when you call somebody crazy or make fun of them, I have a few words for you. You don't have a clue what you're talking about. You have no idea what honor is. And for those few people that might call a handful of us a little off the rocker, you should see the kind of assholes we deal with. You should see the kind of losers we put up with. So I wouldn't trade places with those jackasses in a heartbeat, because I know who kind of friends I have, and I know what kind of service, and I know what kind of honor they have. And if I'm surrounded by winners, I'll have to walk away from the losers that call people names. And I particularly do not care what you think. It doesn't surprise me that some people have diminished our hard work. It does not surprise me. And people who casually throw out cheap remarks, cheap shots, does not surprise me. So when you get a phone call from the highest office of the United States, it's ring, ring, it's the president. It makes kind of for good way to call it a night. So I look at some of these people who've kind of tore up the field report. The reason I stopped doing the field report is because of this very story I'm about to share with you. In 2013, I had moved back here from Missouri. I had learned enough about going out in the field, learning about how to be a journalist, which to me was like the last thing in the world I wanted to do. In fact, I was so split on this decision. I didn't know whether I wanted to be on Facebook, social media, or do radio. I had no idea. I just knew I had a little bit of experience because somebody gave me an opportunity to prove to them that I might be worth something. And in the world of media and news media, that's really hard to do, by the way. You gotta prove you're gonna be capable. So you're not gonna go out there and make a lot of friends, especially if you have no clue how to be a reporter. I would include myself into that. But somehow I found my way around some very great journalists, people that worked in the media, who gave me a chance to prove myself a little bit. They didn't have to, but they did. I don't know what they were thinking, but thank you. I'm grateful that we have friends like that. Why they put up with us, I'll never know. But listen, it's because they put up with us. They've shown me what I want to be more like. If I was to be a journalist or a veteran reporter, I would give them the highest honor to do the best I can at doing the best report possible. This might be that one report will take me over the edge, and I thank you for my friend who is a very high official who served honorably, who gave me the opportunity to tell his story. I'm going to take you back to 1983 in Kuwait. A lot of these guys were coming off the most strenuous training that would kill anybody. But the only purpose behind the training to begin with is because if you're not trained for what you're going to confront on the other side of the world, you will die. And now, listen, most of you do not have that kind of training in high school. No matter how much pageantry, how much pride some of us have, when you're in military training, you start from zero and you got to work your way up. And that's how the real world really is. Whatever you signed up for, if you're lucky, you might make it to graduation. That is the life of a Navy SEAL. Now, I don't personally know what it's like to be a Navy SEAL. As I told you earlier, I barely made it through basic training, and I was paralyzed for a very short time. And it took me almost 20 years to learn how to recuperate from that injury. But my injury was not combat related, so I can't really consider myself a combat related injury, although it falls in line with that military training is how yet to be determined. So I picked up this report and I decided I was going to do something different. While I couldn't finish my military training in 1993, I had known at that point I'm not going to be able to finish my military career. And they gave me an honorable discharge, and I'm grateful for that. And it was really hard to recuperate what I lost because I had opportunities that now have passed me by. I accumulated college debt, so I'm not going to be able to pay for it that way. So I worked 2 jobs, waited tables, did whatever I could. But it never left me in the back of my head that I wanted to do something with this. I didn't want to be injured, and I didn't want to just throw away opportunity. And I certainly didn't want to look behind me and have regret. And that's what I'm here to tell you guys. There's a lot of people look back, they look at their lives looking backward in the rearview mirror at what could have been. And I'm telling you what can be. It's not because of what you did behind you in the rearview mirror. For a soldier, there are a lot of things about what you see in the battlefield that these soldiers have shared with me, and only a few stories I can really share with you. I don't have a credible wealth of knowledge, but hearing their story, it gives me a little more insight. It makes what I did at the field report have purpose. In 2003, I started journaling regularly, watching one Fox News report after another until I just had writer's cramp. I was borrowing some of the stories from the very journalists that were on the field. Little did I know that some of those people would become my close friends and confidants. Very grateful. So I started doing these reports on a regular basis. I'm just sitting in my living room. Nothing special. I'm nobody in the reality. Just somebody that took interest in this story, a shock and awe. I would have believed that if we were going in Iraq, we better have a good reason. And that, in my own mind, I made a justification because I figured, well, there's got to be a really good reason to go in Iraq because it just didn't make sense in reality. So I have to believe that when commanders and military tell you, you got to go here, I'm going to assume they know what they're talking about. I hope they take seriously about the decisions they make because they know they're dealing with human lives. And the worst part of it is on the other side, you want to make sure those guys get out of there with their lives. So telling these stories and reports, I'm zigzagging for a reason because in 1993, I had no idea that I would confront the things I saw in the field. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I knew from what I've seen, little did I know that the experiential knowledge goes beyond sitting at a desk and talking about it. But I retired the field report in 2015, 16, and I switched it around, but I was phasing it out And this year was my last year. I had to do at least make the 10-year mark and say at least I accomplished that. But because people had discredited us so much on social media, I figured with all the good things I've done with this, I'm not going to let them take that away. Not with the kind of rank, not with the kind of experiential knowledge, not without the blood, sweat, and tears that we put into this. So for those people that discredited us, thank you. Thank you. You make it an honor for me to sit here and tell you this report. It is an honor that you discredit us on social media because we never belonged there to begin with. And it's an honor to serve with people who have 3 Purple Hearts, who've saved 40, 50 people's lives in one day. So when you discredit my reports, all it did is fuel the ammunition in my gut that I got to do this report. I think about those people that have discredited us. I know some of you know what it's like to prove your point or support it with evidence. I had to take a college class because I realized I'm not going to be able to really tell a story because I am horrible at writing run-on sentences. I went through all my book reports and I'm like, oh my God, I suck at writing. Why in the world would I be the one to do a report when I can't even learn sentence structure, for God's sake? But because of my injury, I had to learn how to put sentences together again. I had to learn how to write again. I had paralysis from my spinal cord down, and I didn't have any coaching or help. In fact, I had more problems with family than I ever did prior to that. They made fun of me, made cracks at me, made jokes at me, and it hurt really bad. In fact, there's still those kind of people. They won't go out of their way for anyone unless it's something in it for them. They made fun of me. They uninvited us to places and called us names. And that's the kind of home I never want for anybody, especially if you've been injured. You know, when you deal in the medical field, one of the things you know is a bedside manner. The last thing you want to be hearing about is somebody making those kind of remarks to somebody. It takes a real idiot to say those things to somebody that's crippled, who's got a PTSD injury, especially somebody that served. So when I hear about stories that happen to veterans, it's outside of my scope. I don't really know how to talk to somebody that can talk to somebody who served honorably. Some of you people belong in a different category. So when you discredit our reports, it means nothing to me. Because on a rank of 1 to 10, you're a 0 in my book. Thank you, though. Thank you. Because you just made it that much more important. Thank you. You've given us enough reason to get up and do it again and again and again. That's where our motivation is driven. I know some of you guys have friends, family, who've been horribly mistreated at home. Most of the reason why people go to the military is got to escape the home life and the family that you grew up in. And when people do that, there's enough reason to walk away from it altogether, but not enough to walk away from being around some of my great friends who would have each other's back in a heartbeat. If they could, they would. So for that reason, we continue on this journey. To me, the field report became one of my central focuses. It was a source of survival. Come home to an abusive home, abusive family, and I thank God that I had put my hard work into this. Because much of those people have disappeared. Who knows who they're making, what they've done with their lives. Maybe they turned it around and did something right. I hope for their sake they did. But they made life very miserable for everybody around us, including myself. And I could only pray for them. That's the best I could do for them. So when I tell you the story that 1993, from my injury up into 2003, was 10 years. And I still didn't realize the setbacks I had suffered. I didn't know that I'd have auditory problems, vision problems, speech problems. But that all came over time. And I was overcoming a lot more than just trying to be an average reporter. I was trying to overcome the disabilities that came from it. So I don't want to talk too much about setbacks, but I would tell you, having survived a couple of surgeries since that point, and now finally I feel like I'm moving forward in recovery and making the right steps. I didn't realize the challenges to just live an average life again, what it would cost me personally, cost me time away from having a life, a normal life. And I made an agreement with my friend who's a Navy SEAL that from this point on, we're going to make the most of every opportunity. We've had so many setbacks personally that we can't afford to lose out on all the other good things that are going to come from it. So when they're in Kuwait, these guys were injured to the point of death. They will tell you firsthand the enemy has no empathy. So when I look at the world around us, the difference that makes us human is empathy, compassion for one another. And if people don't have that, it don't matter how many stories you tell, because the human side is that these guys were holding these guys in their arms as they're dying. If you look at that story about President Trump, who promoted the Navy SEAL during the speech, I didn't know it at the time, but he was promoted in heaven. And I've talked to my friends about stories from heaven because they've had life and death experiences like myself. And we've had life and death experiences. You can't really kind of explain it. And when I talk to these guys, you don't have a normal conversation. Not when you've seen life and death so much. And I was telling him tonight, and I'll tell you guys, you haven't really lived until you've loved. You haven't really sacrificed till you give so much of yourself, you almost give your life, or give your life. You haven't really fully lived till you really care about another human being. And what these guys have done, what they've witnessed, there aren't words, there aren't a way to write a book about it. Some things you just can't talk about. You can't explain it in words. Some emotions cannot be best expressed with words. So we took it a step further. We said, we're going to make fun of some things. We're going to make some of us more stand-up comic material instead. I know it's opposite of what you would think. The only thing it keeps some of us sane is making light of it. But it doesn't take away from what we've been through. So why did we pull this stuff off? Because we realized we could do something different here. Not photography, not tell war stories, but what lessons did we take from it? Well, one of them, of course, is making light of it. Not now, but at some point. So when you hear the story about Ring Ring, the president's on the phone, it's not something you go through every day. And I know my friend knows what I'm talking about, because we had this horrible night, kind of just barely making it through the day, and he has to drop the call because he has to take a call from the president. I don't know, just go from one extreme to the other. I laugh because I realize that a lot of us might not have a personal phone call from the president. So it's one of those things, I guess. It comes with the job and the job description, I guess. But, you know, he poured out his heart to me in 2013. And where I started is where I'm going to end. That night was an incredibly different night. It was a decision I had to make. I cannot do the field report the same. I was listening on the other line as one of his best friends was killed in action. And I started to get acquainted with some of the SEALs, and it broke me. I even told him, I don't know if I could ever do this again. Not because of what he went through, but I for the first time, felt very connected. That one of our soldiers died right there, literally, over the phone. I did not take it well. And I really haven't been the same person. It was such a hard loss. I could imagine serving with these guys. I might not know some of you guys personally or served with you in uniform, but that was the hardest day in my, quote, amateur radio career, next to listening to a phone call of a missing girl and being on the other line, hearing that they found her body. So it takes a lot of heart to talk about these stories without coming away a little torn up. So I don't look at these stories anymore the same. So ending this chapter, 10 years of doing the field report, I met journalists, I met credible speakers, incredible people that gave me an opportunity to prove myself, and they gave me a chance to tell their part of the story. And I hope any one of you understand that some of us are losing everything in the process, but it's because we believe in something. That's not because we're like losers either, by the way. Although sometimes I wondered through this if we're really doing the right thing. It's really hard to put yourself in front of this. I bought t-shirts. I said, hey, we got to represent ourselves right. We can't just go in there, say we're YouTube reporters trying to make a way for ourselves. We have to have press passes. We have to have the right equipment. We can't just go in there and waltz in there and say, hey, I'm a YouTube reporter. Like I said, it just won't seriously take you that serious. But I did work for a radio station, and they weren't going to give me a chance, but they gave me a chance. So thank you. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Because I know from this point on, many of us are not going to be where we're at in a couple months. Maybe by next year, we might be living in a mansion. I don't know. But I never thought of this as getting rich. But I want to be able to chronicle these stories. And if this would be my last report, I hope you guys take away the good, bad, and ugly from it. Losing my voice. I didn't want to miss this opportunity. I did one of my final reports because I realized that there's not enough engine in this fire to keep going the rate we've been going. We have to pay our bills, and we're not making it as amateurs anymore. And that's why I'm asking you guys to take a moment to give us a special critique, not harsh criticism. We had plenty of that. We're asking you guys to do a summary of what we could do differently or do better if we decide to go forward. But photography was one of our strengths. I could tell you writing reports was not, but I'm getting better. And when I look at the stories about Kuwait and a Navy SEAL, it does change you. There are things I didn't expect when I started that report in 2003, when I was watching Shock and Awe. It's a lot easier to do a report at home than go out there in the field and really experience it. So I'm not into armchair politics. I'm into authentic, real reporting, the kind of stuff that takes you outside from just looking in. It's really easy to watch TV and analyze news. It's another thing to be in it. I want to take you to one of the more important reports I did, one I always found our honor and privilege, and I didn't know it at the time, what it would involve me. Joplin tornado. I've told a lot of people about the tornado. I come from the East Coast. We had a lot of snowstorms, but nothing quite like the Joplin tornado. By the time I walked away, I had more stories about survivors. Stories are just fascinating, at the same time heartbreaking. So when I tell you guys these stories, I realize you have to really put yourself in it to appreciate it. In fact, they call it embedded reporting for a reason. I didn't know that quite yet. All I knew is I gotta get gas, and I gotta get up there, and I gotta be at ground zero. And when I found at ground zero, in every different direction was devastation. It was a war zone. This is a natural catastrophe. You would have thought we went to war. And some of which I think is like our life. We don't look at a storm as a war zone, but very much we're in a battle, a bigger battle I could never have imagined at this point. Some of which I thought was a war, ideas, beliefs, opinions, that's part of it. Some they believe it's skin deep. I don't know that it's anything but more than just people trying to do the incredible work that's in front of them. And I think it comes with great honor and privilege to be around people that take their job not so much serious, but they take their job with responsibility, and they know that the decisions are always life and death when you're thinking at critical points. So I think about these reports, and what we've done is what I studied out in the field and I saw in Joplin. Yeah, there were very much life and death decisions made in the field very quickly and responsibly. That's how you learn, though. And I hope you appreciate that this kind of hard work does not come easily. And there's a lot of great people I've met that would give you the time and day. But there are people that don't simply know the work that's invested in the time that we put into this. Thank you for listening to this report. It's been an incredible honor to meet and get to know people who understand the sacrifice that comes with hard work. Thank you for listening to the Field Report. God bless you, and God bless America.